Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Travel Unity Summit and to our session on accessibility, vocational rehabilitation, and the tourism industry. My name is Cindy, and I'm one of your hosts today. We are so looking forward to having you all with us today to join in this important conversation about inclusion in the travel industry for people of all abilities. We'll be learning about case studies and whether it's talking about hotels, the airline industry, tour companies, and travel and tourism, and how we can make this whole industry more inclusive of people with disabilities and their family members, which is a sizable percentage of the population and will likely be all of us at one point. So we'll be discussing much more about this as we get into the program. But before we do that, I just wanted to share a few tips about how we're going to communicate within this webinar feature today. We wish we could be in person, but of course that's not possible considering the current circumstances of the pandemic. And so instead what we'll be doing today is I wanted to share just a frame of the program. So we're going to start looking at case studies and learning about vocational rehabilitation really at the national and state levels. And so we're absolutely delighted that we will be speaking with people that are really specialists in the vocational rehabilitation sector who are supporting all different kinds of businesses and people to create inclusive employment opportunities. So that's going to be the beginning of our session. And then next we're going to discuss, we're going to have some speakers who are doing this work out in the field, and they're going to talk about their own experiences. And so we'll hear from someone from Wheel the World, from the Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, and also from advocate, speaker, blogger, and founder of Give Beauty Wings, Jan Horn. So during the program today, we'd like to invite you all to communicate in the following ways. So first of all, we do have closed captioning today. And so to access the automated live captions, just click on your closed caption button on the caret that's there, and it'll say show subtitles. Select that, and you should be able to see the subtitles on the bottom of your screen. We'd also like to invite your participation today. Though we're hosting this as a webinar, we would like to engage in conversation via the chat box. So this is our main conduit for dialogue today, versus raising your hand as you might do at the Travel Unity Summit in person. We ask that instead you type into the chat box and ask your questions there. If you select all panelists and attendees, this means that whatever questions you put into the chat box, or stories or experiences or knowledge that you'd like to share, that is going to be seen by everyone. So remember, if you select all panelists and attendees, you're engaging in conversation with both speakers behind the scenes, as well as all the people watching from home. If you select all panelists, this means that your questions and comments will only come to the moderators and panelists. So let's say you're having difficulty, some kind of technical difficulty behind the scenes with Zoom, you can message us to all panelists and we'll do our best to help behind the scenes. Last but not least, this session is being recorded, and that's important for all of us to remember, that while we have an audience here today, there will also be other people that couldn't make it today that will want to watch later on the Travel Unity's website and other platforms. And so please be cognizant of that when you ask questions or share comments, as those may be shared verbally by our moderators or our guests. And so just know that this is being recorded, and anything you share through the chat box might be shared out with our audience. So I'd like to now invite on our first our moderator for the first part of the session. I'd like to give a little bit of an introduction, which might make you blush a little bit here. But this is Kathy West Evans, and she is a certified rehabilitation counselor who is fluent in American Sign Language. She has her master's in public administration and a Bachelor of Science, Kathy started in the field of rehabilitation in 1978. She worked in a community agency for the Washington State Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, the Region X Office of the Rehabilitation Services Administration, and now leads the National Employment Team, NET, at the Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation. And she's going to share so much more about that, but I just want to say she's a member and a past chair of the Veterans Advisory Council on Rehabilitation. She's a former commissioner on the Commission on Rehabilitation Counselor Certification, and she has co-authored articles focused on the employment of people with disabilities. And I'm so grateful to be able to read her bio because I'm sure there's so many accomplishments and contributions she's made to vocational rehabilitation. And we at Travel Unity, I'm actually a board member of Travel Unity. I just want to say we're so grateful to you, Kathy, for enlightening us and sharing how different companies and organizations within the travel and tourism industry can really engage with vocational rehabilitation. So thank you so much. And I'm going to let you take it away, and I'll be behind the scenes moderating the chat and helping out there. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Cindy. And thank you for your support with technology. I just want to say thank you to you and Ronnie for really including disability in this whole diversity and inclusion discussion and including it up front. We, in the field of vocational rehab, really understand the intersectionality between disability, race, culture, gender, and the fact that we're talking about the large group when we're talking about people with disabilities. And it's the one diversity group that any one of us could join at any time, and most of us will, though we're all in denial around aging, it happens. So our goal is to really support our business customers at the national, state, and local level in hiring, but we're also working with a lot of our customers on accessibility, connecting with local resources so that customers with disabilities are also getting support. We do know that for individuals with disabilities and their family members, they will be spending their dollars and their time with companies that are accessible. So I'm so excited to have some wonderful partners on the call with me today, and 4 of our members from the National Employment Team. With the National Employment Team, we have 78 agencies. We're in every state, the territories, and the District of Columbia. And today, our team is on from California. We've got Alia. From Connecticut, we've got Jonathan. From Iowa, Michelle. And from Nevada, we have Ken. We will be putting together a resource list. So at the end of this, that'll be posted to Travel Unity's website. That will include contact information for all of us and for our partners at Hands On and the Hyatt. So the partnership, it takes partners. That's why we're all here, right? We're stronger together. And with Hands On Education, this has been a long-term partnership. I'm not going to date us, John, on what that looks like, but John Ficca was a special ed teacher in the Florida area when he realized that a lot of the students he was working with, students with disabilities, did not have the opportunity to have the same kind of work experience that some of the students without disabilities were having, and that there were a lot of students that he was working with who would graduate with certificates in special education, but were really interested in careers in areas like culinary arts, hospitality. There's such a number of careers within the hospitality and travel industry. And so he made the connection with the Hyatt in the Florida area and started building a relationship. I am so thrilled to have connected with John and our team in Florida who was working with him, because they really built a model. We started in culinary arts with 2 weeks of hands-on training in the Hyatt kitchens, and the Hyatts, what can I say? They have been fabulous partners across the country. And we love this partnership so much that my organization hosts every one of our national conferences at a Hyatt property because of their dedication. And I do want to say, in travel and hospitality, it's important that when companies are accommodating and supporting diversity and inclusion, and including disability, do business with these partners. So here's my Hyatt. Oh, it's backwards because that's the way it comes on the screen, but there's my Hyatt card. So I just want to put a shout out to our Hyatt partners. So the model in Florida that John and the Hyatt developed was picked up, and the next we moved the same training, working with John and his team, so the same trainers, so that relationship is solid across the country. We moved it to the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and then started expanding it across the country. And John, I don't know if you're going to give a shout out to all the locations, but off the top of my head, I know we have 9 sites in Texas. I believe we have 3 in Colorado. We're in California. We're here in Washington State. And it's very exciting to see the growth here, because we're also focusing on youth that are transitioning out of high school. Our VR program here is working with John on that program to give youth early exposure to careers in hospitality and travel. So it's exciting to see that. But I know that we're in a lot of other locations, and I just want to give a shout out again to our partners at the Hyatt. Mark Harvard, the area director of HR with the Hyatt Regency in Orlando. I can't say enough. I'm anxious to get back, Mark, and to be taken care of it with the wonderful hospitality in Orlando. And then we have Chef Andrew. He's an extraordinary young man. No one can tell the story like he can tell the story, but this is a young man who wanted to be in this industry. He has a work ethic that is unbelievable. And the exciting thing about his success is he's spreading the word, and he's supporting other people with disabilities in joining the hospitality and tourism industry. So John, join me and add some comments, and let's have a dialogue here.
Okay, well, first of all, let me see.
Turn on your camera.
I just started the video. My name is John with Hands On Education, and thank you, Kathy, for inviting us to join you today. When you talk about community partnerships, I'm so proud that our model has been looked at as one that's very effective and also duplicated in other industries as well. 22 years ago, when we started in Tampa, Florida, could have never dreamed that we would have expanded outside of one department, much less in different cities. And to steal a line from Kathy, we've been successful in vocational rehabilitation about finding local businesses that smell what we're cooking and hire some of our clients and help them with work-based training or experience. But what Kathy's mission is with CSA VR and the net is to find employers that have a footprint in other cities and other states, that it makes it a little bit easier to expand not only the model, but the capacity to train and employ more people with disabilities. Fortunately, we were partnering with Vocational Rehab and with Hyatt, and I had my blinders on. I was thinking young people in Tampa, Florida, and our Hyatt partners, particularly in human resources, said, well, why are we just focused on this department in the kitchen? Why not housekeeping? Why not guest services? Why not shipping and receiving? Why not engineering, doing maintenance? And why are we just in one city? Why not all over Florida? And so I started taking my blinders off, and in over 22 years, we went from one Hyatt to over 35 Hyatts. We're all over Florida, DC, Texas, Seattle, San Diego, Denver, and we just started a couple years ago in Minneapolis. And so it's very exciting to see this model grow. It's also really cool to watch other companies come on board. And I went to one of the CSAVR conferences a couple years ago in Seattle, and it was just neat to see all those companies up there. And I was one, happy that more companies are coming to the table. And I'm talking about at the corporate level, but also I was very proud that we were kind of at the beginning. And it was, we were kind of first to the table, or one of the first ones to the table in terms of this national partnership. Kathy and her organization has made it a lot easier because, you know, when you expand anything or do anything, it's about relationships and about connectivity. And so we would just say, hey, Kathy, we're thinking about expanding to the Hyatt Regency San Antonio in Texas. Could you connect us with your business point of contact in Texas? And so she would, and then we'd go bam, 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 bam. And you know, even though VR is a national program, it's done a little bit differently in every state. And so she's been very helpful in making that easy. It's also easier when you have a business partner that's at the top of their game. And Hyatt was always leading. They were always out front in terms of disability awareness. They had a program called Focus on Abilities years before the ADA was signed in 1990. And they've always been an employer of choice. And I'm not going to steal too much of Mark's information when he presents, but I do want to brag on them because I've learned so much about diversity and equity and inclusion from them. And I've also learned a lot about human resources. And it wasn't just a matter of can we do this? It was how do we make it better, and how do we make it better, and how do we make it better? So the program is not only expanded in different cities and departments, but it's also improved along the way. Another presenter on here with us is one of our students from 2003. He was a young man that was 18, almost 19 when I first met him, very interested in culinary arts, but he knew he wasn't going to college. He was struggling in high school, had some issues with attention and also with processing information. He can read, but don't give him a test because he has issues with taking tests. So when I first met him, I knew that he could do this type of work because he had a part-time job washing dishes and doing some prep at a local company that did catering. I knew he could do the physical work. What I wanted was to get him with Hyatt. Although Hyatt's not obligated to hire any of our students that go through this 80-hour internship, they've hired many. And I knew that Andrew would catch the eye of the executive chef at the Grand Hyatt Tampa Bay. And that's exactly what happened. He worked for Hyatt for a couple of years, and then he left and helped someone open a restaurant, a freestanding restaurant. A couple of years later, moved to Renaissance Hotel in Tampa. And then I think it was about 8 years later, he texted me and he went on our website and hit contact us. And he said, hey, I'm looking for John. Could you call me when you get a chance? And I happened to be at the Hyatt when I saw this email come through. And I said, yes, Andrew, I'm still here. I'll call you back in a few minutes. And by the way, congratulations, because on his title on his email, it said executive chef. And I always knew that one of our students was going to reach that position one day. I didn't know that somebody was going to do it in only 8 years, but he did everything that you have to do to be successful in our industry. And the number one thing is work hard and be willing to do whatever to climb up the ladder. You also have to be in the right place at the right time. So I'm going to start by first introducing Mark Havard with Hyatt. Mark I've known him since 2000 when he was the HR director at the Hyatt Regency Orlando. Then he transferred to the Hyatt Regency Grand Cypress in Orlando and immediately took our program there as well. And then years ago when when Hyatt purchased the Peabody Hotel, which is now the Hyatt Regency Orlando, he contacted me and said, John, give me a few months. Gotta get our feet on the ground in there, and then we're going to bring the program. And more importantly, he said, but when we introduce the program to this new staff, we're going to tell them it's a hospitality training program. It's not just a culinary program. And so we want to train and possibly hire people in all departments. And so with that, I'm going to introduce you to a guy that's a champion of inclusion and a champion for people with disabilities. And Mark, if you would, if you could.
Well, thank you, John. You're always a very kind person, maybe too kind, but I'll take it. My name is Mark Havard. I'm the Human Resource Director at the Hyatt Regency Orlando. It's a 1,641 room property that's attached to the convention center here in Orlando. Normally, that is a great thing. Convention business is outstanding as a general rule. However, right now we know that it's not booming and it's struggling. Some of our resort properties are doing better. Andrew probably can tell you when he comes on a little bit. He's in a resort area. But absolutely, it's been a pleasure for me to work with John and hands-on education and many of the trainers that he's employed. I did start with John. It's hard to believe, but it's been 20 years. When I moved, I've been with Hyatt for over 30 years, and I moved back to Orlando in 2000, which is when we started with John at my hotel. And for me, whoops, sorry about that. For me, it's been a very rewarding program, not only to watch people grow that have varying degrees of disabilities, but also learn as well from our students and from John and his team. So John is correct. We did have a program that was called Focus on Abilities. And we did just that. We were progressive. We recruited people that had disabilities. We learned from people that had disabilities, and we employed people that have disabilities. To me, hands-on education was a natural recruiting partnership where we could provide training opportunities in a variety of different departments. And also during this 80-week program, it was a working interview. So selfishly, we were able to watch people progress, their self-confidence, their self-esteem, and their motivation. I would say probably 90% of the people that participated in hands-on at hotels that I've worked at, when they have their graduation, if you ask them, would you work at Hyatt if you could? 90% of them would say yes. And one of the big factors is that they didn't live in areas, so they came from all over the state. But we were able to employ quite a few people, not just in culinary, but in other places. And through networking as well, we're able to place people that may have done training in one of our hotels to place them in another hotel if there were opportunities. So it really was a win-win strategy. Personally, as an employer, back 20 years ago, and even early on in the 90s, I'll humbly say employers maybe were a bit afraid to hire people with disabilities. They were afraid of legal issues that they might encounter, liability issues that they might encounter. And for me, this partnership with Hands-On completely erased that. And I'm so very thankful and thankful to John and his team for eliminating that fear for me. And one of the main things that I've learned is that it is okay to ask people with disabilities, ask your employees, right? If you don't know how something is going to work, ask them. And I used to be afraid to do that, and now I'm not. I think that's my first fallback is, let's chat about this and how is this going to work. I'll never forget the time that I had a person apply for a front office position at one of my hotels, and our front desk level was here, and this person was a wheelchair user, and I was not sure exactly how they were going to be able to work behind the front office. And I didn't think it was a reasonable accommodation to cut down this marble front desk. And I thought, gosh, the expense of that, would this person stay with us? And this was early on in my career with Hyatt. And so I interviewed this person who was otherwise very well qualified for the position, worked in reservations, knew how to use hotel property management systems, outgoing, friendly, great smile, everything. And he used a wheelchair. And I remember going to my boss, this is actually before I met John, but I remember going to my boss and saying, I don't know exactly what to do. And she said, did you ask him how this would work? And I said, no. And she goes, well, call him back in and ask him. And that was so reinforced with hands-on. And, I'm really proud of Hyatt, not just my hotels, but our hotels that are around the country that have embraced people with disabilities, learned from people with disabilities, learned from our guests that have disabilities. And at our corporate level, hands-on education is recognized as one of our diverse partners at our corporate level. And it fits nicely. I know Kathy was talking about youth, but it fits also very nicely with our initiative with we call Rise High, where we are looking to employ opportunity youth, which are young folks who are either not working or not in school. And hands-on education is a great source for us to find candidates for our Rise High initiative. And it's been very rewarding. So it's a good win-win partnership. I cannot wait till our business starts to improve and we can continue that partnership. And just want to thank John and thank all of my colleagues at Hyatt for embracing, and to also thank you for allowing me to present today. So I appreciate it.
I want to add that Mark's talking about how this partnership fits nicely into some of their initiatives, but it's also an illustration of their purpose. And a lot of companies have mission statements, but Hyatt about 5 or 6 years ago brought every general manager to Orlando in Mark's hotel from all over the world. And Mark, how many general managers were there when they rolled this out? And then tell them what your purpose is.
Boy, I don't remember how many GMs were here, but it was a lot of work. We were really trying to show off, but it was great to be here during that, as every general manager at every brand that we have, so full service, select service around the world. Again, we have 1,600 rooms here, and there's probably only maybe 3 or 4 hotels that can handle the size. But they introduced our purpose that we live and die by, and that's to care for people so they can be their best.
Yeah, and it's if you've worked with Hyatt for a little while, like I have, you know that they've been actually exhibiting that or modeling that forever. They just put it into words, care for people so they can be their best. And that is what helps our program grow and improve, because they don't do anything halfway. They always want to grab onto good things and make them better. An example is anytime Hyatt hires a person who is deaf or hard of hearing, if they sign, they'll have me come in and do a sign language class for all of their employees who are interested. And it's a blast, because you get 30, 40 people in a room that work in different departments, and you can just feel the energy that and the passion that these people have about wanting to reach out, and not only to that one employee or associate who's deaf, but also to any guest that comes in that hotel who happens to be deaf. So they're always looking to make things better. And Mark, I want you to share our appreciation also with Tyrone Sadameyer, who's your VP of Diversity and Inclusion, and Nikki Massey, who's your VP of HR, and Mark Perdue as well. We really appreciate all that you do, and I know you're a busy guy. And right now it's a scary time, but I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I get to see you next week because I'm going to be traveling through. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Now I'd like to introduce Chef Andrew Basch. As I said before, he graduated our program in 2003, so 17 years ago. And one of the neat things about Andrew is that he, when he did work for Hyatt for a couple years, anytime a new class came in, he would walk up to those people and say, "Hey, I was just where you were 2 years ago." And they go, "Really?" And they'd say, "Yep, I was scared, nervous, didn't know what I was doing. And so just let me know if I can be of any help to you during your training." And that it gives new people hope. And so, Andrew, with that, I'd love for you to share your experience and what this partnership meant to you, but also what these alternative programs mean for people who aren't going to college. You and I both know that the majority of sous chefs never went to culinary school, but we live in a country that has this myth that if you don't go to college, you can't be successful. And it's so untrue. So if you could, take it from there and just share your experience.
Awesome. Thank you very much, John. You're one of the best hype men in the business. I appreciate that. So I was lucky enough to go through the hands-on training 2-week course with Hyatt. Go back a little bit farther. I was in my senior year of high school. I was only attending first period, I believe. The rest of it was OJT, where I was working at a local catering company. One of the days when I was at school for my first period, I got called to the office, which usually wasn't a good thing. So I was a little nervous. When I went there, I got to actually meet my appointed VR counselor. In that time, she told me about the program at Hyatt and heard that I was working in culinary and asked if I'd be interested. I said, absolutely. A couple of weeks later, I got to meet with her and got to meet John and walk through the Grand Hyatt Tampa Bay kitchen. Not only was this a cool event because I wanted to cook and the kitchen was in such beautiful conditions and such a nice, beautiful hotel, but I also grew up in the area. So as a kid, our family always dined at Armani's, one of the 4-star restaurants in Tampa, as well as Oyster Catchers. And so it was really cool for me to go and actually experience the behind the scenes of a hotel at such a young age. And I was in. Unfortunately, I wasn't 18 yet, so I had to wait a couple of months until I graduated and was able to attend the program. At that time, not only did John pay me for the 2 weeks that I worked at the Grand Hyatt, but he also put me up in a hotel. So I got to learn what it was like to work in a professional kitchen 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week for 2 weeks. I was taken out of my house and had to be a responsible adult, get myself to work, feed myself, and it was quite an experience. I think that just as important it is that Hyatt gives us a place to train, which is amazing, is that John takes every step of the matter and makes sure he uses every minute of those 2 weeks as a training lesson. Throughout those 2 weeks, he came by the hotel room, checked on us. I remember having a cooler in the corner, and he's like, "Do I need to check if there's any alcohol in that cooler?" And there wasn't, but it was quite entertaining. During the 2 weeks at the Grand Hyatt, I got to train in the main kitchen. I got to train on my first line, and I got to train over at Oyster Catchers, which was a seafood restaurant. At the end of the 2 weeks, I applied for a job at Oyster Catchers as a line cook, and I got hired, which was amazing. I had a awesome career with Hyatt. I was there for 2.5 years, was able to work my ranks up from an entry-level cook up to their highest level cook. And at that point, one of the sous chefs at the restaurant that I was working at decided he was going to go open up his own restaurant. And I went with him. It was a great experience to have. At that point, I lost my contact with John. So not for any reason, but I had moved on from Hyatt. Fast forward 8 years later, I'm signing my offer letter with Marriott Hotels to be an executive chef at 26 years old. First thing I did was call my mom. The second thing I did was email John. I believe I would have always gotten to this point, but it was a huge boost, a huge help to have hands-on training, to be able to get a job at Hyatt. If I had applied without this 2-week interview process, would I have even gotten accepted? I had no experience whatsoever as far as a line was concerned or inside a restaurant. And most likely it wouldn't have gotten that jump start. It would have been 36 before I was an executive chef instead of 26. At that point, I got to reconnect with John, and it was excellent. He always continues to challenge me in good ways. And from helping other students in the program to talking to families that are interested in getting into the program. And anytime in any of the kitchens I've been in that I have an open position, my first thing I do after I post it on Indeed nowadays is I text John and ask him if he has anybody qualified or that would be interested in the position, and have hired several hands-on education graduates, as well as he's helped me connect with people that haven't gone through hands-on yet, but are looking to be a prep cook and move their career on from there. And it truly has been a great experience. I've got to meet some amazing people like Kathy and Mark that do really great things every day, as well as the hardworking people with VR, and the fact that this person spent about 45 minutes with me in total time. I'm sure a little bit more time with paperwork, but it was a huge impact on my life and has changed my life. And in turn, I really try to focus and help change other people's lives. And that's my story about hands-on. And want to say a big thank you to Hyatt Hotels and Kathy, and obviously John with hands-on education. It's been quite a pleasure, and I can't wait to see what the future is going to bring.
Cool. Thank you so much, Andrew. I always feel like a proud dad, even though you're not my son. But I see that Cindy wants us to hang out just for a minute. So just in case we have some people out there that want to ask some questions. I see Kathy's popped up. Mark, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, Kathy, it's back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And I have to say, I can attest to the great chef that Andrew is. I've been able to enjoy his food. And I remember at the Marriott, you were so creative that you started your own herb garden to be able to have fresh herbs in your kitchen. So yeah, Andrew, you've done a fabulous job, and thank you for the support in always supporting the hiring and supporting other candidates and families about their journey through this. So yes, we have some time for questions, and I want to start by letting people know, Mark talked about the struggle with language and what to say and how to say it. And a lot of times we hear from businesses, and I think John will attest this as well, we just don't know what we don't know and we're afraid to ask. It's our goal not to have that happen. It's our goal to focus on developing an individual in their career like Andrew's goals and supporting their success, but also to support our business customers. We really want to open up that dialogue about disability because we know that in most situations, this is, like I said earlier, the largest diversity group in the country, 1 out of 4 individuals, and over 20 million families impacted by disability, but it's not a dialogue that we've had. So we want to open up that dialogue, help you train staff, support great people like Mark, who he could do his own training session. But, you know, we also do the business to business connection. So the Hyatt has helped us with other companies. So I just want to open that up. And I also want to say that accessibility has really grown with the Hyatt. This is a company that listens. I was contacted by a member of the deaf community just recently who was raving about the fact that she had been in a Hyatt and on her key card, there was a phone number in the back for texting if you needed assistance. Most people can pick up the phone and call a front desk, but if you're deaf, you know, that doesn't happen. And so they had a text number as well as a flashing light on the door. So they have done a lot of accommodations there. And this leads to one of the questions. So Mark, John, and Andrew, if you could turn your cameras on so we can have a little dialogue here before we move on and introduce our VR team. We'll open up for questions. So one of the questions was about accessible transportation to Hyatt properties from the airport. And I know that the Hyatts have worked with us whenever we have a conference. We just set that up in advance. But I wondered if, Mark, you would want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, it goes back to our purpose of caring for people so that they can be their best. And we truly do live and die by that. We have, as you mentioned, a texting system. We call it Zingle. We can communicate with guests before their arrival, during their stay with us, and after their departure. But we would want to personalize that service as best we can. So engaging the guests to see what specific needs they had with their transportation. You know, and each hotel has their own resources for that. You know, I saw that question in there. Thank you. You know, if we were here at my hotel, we're very fortunate to have a Hyatt hotel right in the Orlando International Airport. So we could really personalize any sort of transportation needs from airplane, airport to hotel. But we would want to tailor that to each individual need. So depending on what their disability was, what needs did they have, that's in our culture, it's in our DNA to tailor to one's personal needs, and we thrive on things like that.
Great, thank you very much. I know that when we have conferences at the Hyatts, and I've been to several, the staff are always very welcoming. We do a walkthrough. I know that we've had guests who are blind or have a vision loss, and the staff will take the time to walk them through the lobby and help orient them to the layout of the hotel. So I would say when you register, if you need an accommodation, just let them know. That's true, right, Mark?
Absolutely. Another thing that I'd like to selfishly mention about my hotel here is it is a large hotel. We do host the largest conference for people with disabilities called Family Cafe. We host that every year. It obviously didn't happen this year, but it is a great opportunity for our employees to shine, and they look forward to Family Cafe and assisting the people that come from all over the state to this conference. And we do, in some years past, we'll do some maybe elevated training leading into Family Cafe with maybe service animals, with people that would use wheelchairs, and how do we set up all of our tables in our restaurants to have more room because we have a greater percentage of people with disabilities. Parking and valet parking, and what do our people do if there's vehicles that are custom vehicles for the people that have disabilities. So we really take that opportunity when Family Cafe comes around to elevate our training opportunities and look back at all of our notes from past conferences to refresh our memories.
And I want to add a little bit to that from my observation, because when our students first start, we kind of guide them through the first couple days. But it's amazing. They have a lot of questions, and they go, well, what if you're not here? What if the training manager's not here? And I remind them that Hyatt people are not like some of the employees you see at some of these big box stores that'll say, I think it's on aisle 3. A Hyatt associate will get you to where you need to go. So if you ever have a question, and that's what I tell our students, and I've seen them do it with our students and with their external guests as well. But Hyatt has this kind of a mantra: take care of your external and internal guest. And so take care of your employees, and they treat our students as an employee. They're on the clock, they're on their payroll, and they just treat them that way. But it's neat to watch that from a special ed rehab perspective, because I'll give you an example. 22 years ago, when we first started our partnership, I probably was there too much, but because we want them to imprint on the employers or the managers. But nowadays, I'll hear about something a week later, and I'll say, well, what happened? Why didn't you contact me? And they'll say, oh no, we took care of it. They're our employee. And so we've accomplished the ultimate. We basically have, using their culture, Hyatt's culture, they've become job coaches. And so when a parent says, well, how many instructors are going to be with this class of 4 students? I go, I don't know, 60. And they go, what? And I say, yeah, because there's 60 chefs in that kitchen, and they're all job coaches. And so that's kind of cool. And it just, yeah, they do.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that, John. I really do want to reinforce the fact that this is a company that listens, and their mantra around guest services is impressive. So we'll be posting some of this up on a resource page after this to Travel Unity. So we'll work to get that information. Mark, I think putting just your commitment to this population and your statement around this will be important. So someone talked about candidates that are training. So Chef Andrew, you worked with your VR counselor, and there was a question about what does VR do. So with individuals, it's our goal to really listen to their goals, what their experience is, help them build a career, get the training they need, and that's where Andrew is, and continue to support their success in the workplace. So we're really building a plan with the individual that's focused on individual needs and goals, and building a plan with the business and connecting the two. So with Andrew, he hasn't stopped. He feels like he's an extension of the Voc Rehab system at the national level, because he brings that positive message to candidates coming in. So Andrew, what would you say to other individuals who are looking at taking a career track into hospitality and tourism like you did? What's your advice?
My advice is if you enjoy working hard as I do, if you are you enjoy the interaction with people, you're gonna love it. You never know what each day is gonna bring in a good way. Every day is different to the max. A Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Friday, Saturday. One day's a wedding, one day's a bar mitzvah, and then there's 250 people for a conference for 4 days. I would say definitely look into it, ask around, figure out if there's a Hyatt hotel near you and if they're hiring. On the other end, since I work for Marriott now, find out if there's a Marriott hotel around the corner and if they're hiring. And it's really just about that connection. I would say the hospitality industry is one of the last few strongholds that, yes, they look at your resume by all means, but it's only about 10% of what we look at. It's about meeting you. It's about interacting. It's a great opportunity. As John says, you don't have to have a degree. It's about getting in and starting from the bottom and working your way up.
Well,
And
thank you
Kathy,
so much.
Kathy,
Yes.
I just want to add, Andrew's also another example of something I heard from a professor at the University of South Florida. He said, when God gives you a disability, he gives you a superpower in another area. And so Andrew, he had some issues with test taking and that type of processing. But he's obviously an example of how his memory, because he couldn't rely on the writing portion, and his memory increased. Plus, he's an example of when you have, it's called interest driven behavior. You know, he was very interested in cooking, and so that creative part of his brain is just in like ultra high speed mode all the time. There's only 7 notes on a piano, but people write new songs every day. And there's only so many types of food products, but people create new dishes every day. And so we're very proud in rehab to see, because Andrew's just one of the many successful folks that have gone through the VR program. But it's just really cool to see how people like him want to give back and want to hire somebody. And I remember one of our students, and he just happened to be named Andrew as well, and he was on the spectrum, and I introduced him, and he said, well, why don't you come in and just work one day? And he goes, why? Is it so you can see if I'm good enough? And he goes, no, it's really to see if you enjoy working with us. And the kid, he relaxed. It was like Xanax. He just relaxed, and he did his little 1-day trial, ended up working under chef's tutelage for a 1.5 or 2 before he moved on somewhere else. But I think that if I had to advise anybody that's going to partner with somebody else, whether it's an industry, a company, or whatever, is that get to know what they do and how they do it, and how you can partner, because if you partner correctly, you feel like you work there. And that's what you've been able to do with the net, is that as you get to know this particular employer, you almost feel like you work there. And Hyatt is appreciative of all that you and your points of contact throughout the country bring to them, because they're a resource.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the partnership. I know that Mark and Chef Andrew have to get back to their world of work here and their responsibilities, but I also just want to say thank you. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your partnership, and just I think with the Hyatt, and Andrew, you can attest to this. I mean, the Hyatt we've trained over 1,000 people through this partnership, and the Hyatt supports individuals going to work in other companies and industries. In fact, we had one young man, I think it was out of Virginia, John, a young deaf man who had always wanted to travel, and the Hyatt HR person helped him get in touch with one of the cruise lines. So he was able not only to have his dream about being a chef, but also in the traveling part of his life. So again, thank you for your commitment, and keep on going there, Chef Andrew. You're an amazing young guy, and you always astound me in terms of your commitment and work ethic. It's remarkable. So going on from that team, I want to introduce our state level team. We've been talking about the net, and the net is a team. We work together across the country. So as you have seen with the hands-on model, we've been able to move that same model and training program from state to state because we have great people at the state level. And they work closely with us as we're learning lessons in each area. And I will reinforce the fact that VR is referring candidates directly, but we also cover the cost of the 2-week training. So as Andrew said, the candidates who are training are paid, and we're also paying for that on-site training, which is a great way to really engage the enthusiasm and skills and give people real hands experience. So with our California team, we've got Alia. With Connecticut, we've got Jonathan. With Iowa, Michelle. And I believe Ken has joined us from Nevada. But I want to give each of them a chance to talk a little bit about their experience in the hospitality industry. And I know, well, we could start with California, Alia, and you could share your experience working with the Hyatt. You've got a partnership there in California. So Alia is the business engagement manager for our California VR agency, one of our largest agencies in the country. And she supports and engages her local business team with our business customers as we're building out strategies, relationships, and again, to support both the business and the candidates. And that includes life happens. So I know our California team has worked with individuals who have acquired a disability and have been referred by companies where they step in to help them maintain their job and make adjustments in the workplace. So Alia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, this is Cindy here in the background. So we just need Alia to start her video, or we can come back to her.
She's probably busy working on something else. Alia, can you start your video and unmute your line there? Beautiful picture, but we'd like to see your face. All right. Well, with that, as soon as Alia joins us, we'll get her back re-engaged. But stepping right up to the plate here, as always, is Jonathan Richmond. He is our point of contact out of Connecticut. So Jonathan, if you want to say a few words and come on live and talk about your role, that would be awesome.
Oh, great. Thank you. And can everyone, okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Richmond from state of Connecticut, and I work for the agency for the services for the blind, but I also work very closely in conjunction with Mark Henry, who is from our general. What we do is we have several, we call them individualized training and placement programs, ISTPPs. And the purpose of this is to look at specific markets in Connecticut based off different sectors and find out what do employers really need, where is there a shortage. And in Connecticut, we're a small state, but the needs near in the western part of the state near New York City, which would be much different than the needs in the eastern part of the state where it's much more rural. So we have a lot of different types of individual training programs that would range from insurance companies, for example, at the Travelers, where we have 2 programs. One is a call center and one is within their legal division. We also have through Walgreens, we have a retail as well as a distribution center. And there are several others, but the 2 I'd like to focus on is when we, just in terms of hospitality. And one of which is we have at the Mohegan Suns, and the program we call that is the Mohegan Suns Inclusion Program. And the overall goal is to give individuals that we work with an opportunity to gain employment. And for this program, there's a 4-phase process where we have the interview process. And then what there is there's a training for soft skills. And this would be an unpaid component of the job. And the person is learning just socialization, time management, showing up to work on time, just all those soft skills. And then they're also learning the dynamics of the actual business. And then what they do is they move into the third phase, which is actually to start working. And what's great about Mohegan Sun is that there's so many different opportunities, from event security to entry level where you're dishwashing, to there's a call center, there's reservation, there's line cooks, there's many, many different positions, valet parking. So it works out very well for lots of different types of disabilities where a person can really find their niche. So for example, I work with individuals who are legally blind. They can't drive, but there's lots of other opportunities. So within this training program, when it goes into the third phase, the individual gets to begin actually working. And what happens is they're not on the payroll of the Mohegan Sun. They're on the payroll of the agency we have. And in this situation, the agency's name is Viability. So they would be on the payroll of Viability for approximately 6 weeks. So at this time, the employer gets a chance to really look at this employee. Does the employee enjoy the job? Do we need to switch? Are we happy with everything going on? And then once that person is, the consumer we're working with is happy with the position as well as the employer is happy, then what we're able to do is they would go on the payroll of the employer. And in this situation would be Mohegan Sun. And then we're able to provide job coaching temporarily until the person is independent and ready to go. And I like one thing that I think it was John mentioned before in terms of the job coach, because building the natural supports is so, so important, where yes, we could have a job coach in there, but once you have all the other coworkers know the individual and become part of the team, you just have natural support, which really helps to make the person very, very successful. And our motto is we're always coming from the angle of we're here to help the employer meet their employment needs. That's our overall goal. Yes, we want to place individuals with disabilities, but we want to make sure that the person who's being placed is going to be a productive member of the team that they're working for. And one other program for hospitality that we have, and this one would be through the Wyndham Hotels and resorts. And so nationally, I believe they're in over 80 countries and there's 9,000 different hotels. But this one is one that we have in more of the north central part of the state, right off of 84, which is a highly traveled highway where people would go through. And we have a very similar type of program where the training sessions would be a little bit different, but it's the same component where there's a section of learning the soft skills, learning about the business itself, which is unpaid. Then they go into a training program. And it would be the same model of learning specific types of categories of jobs within the hospitality. And then from there, it's the same. They're not on the payroll at first. They're evaluated. Once the employer is satisfied, that person would be hired. Then there would be the job coaching as that person phases out. And just the final one would be that we also have at the Mystic Sea Aquarium, where it's interesting just in hearing about this and speaking with Ronnie and learning about this whole field in terms of the whole tourism and hospitality, how there are some different angles. So we also have one which is at Mystic Sea Aquarium, which would be set up a little bit differently. So just to wrap everything up, what we try to do is we meet with the employer, we find out their needs, and every ISTPP program is set up uniquely to meet the needs of the employer, to need the meet of what type of training would be best. And so it's very, very customized, where it can be a seamless flow to help an ongoing recruitment to help the employer fill positions.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I know that we had a question about the acronym, and Cindy, generally what we call this is on-the-job training, building experience. And again, the programs look different depending on the business, but we'll share Jonathan's contact information so that you can reach out to him. So Thank
And
you,
I
Jonathan.
apologize about that because I try to stay away from those. So
Yeah. We get caught up in our own acronym. So great. So Ken, I see that you're here. So let's start with Ken then, and then we can move to Michelle, and hopefully by then Alia will have her connection issues resolved. So Ken, welcome from Nevada.
Nice to be here. Well, Jonathan explained the mechanics of the work readiness program. So, regarding the payroll from a third party going to the employer. He explained soft skills with the curriculum is and versus hard skills. So I'm not going to go over that, but the programs are the same. They're work readiness training programs. We do a lot of on-the-job training, and we use on-the-job training funds to do these programs. Some national employers that we are engaged with are Sephora, Amazon, TJ Maxx, a lot of casinos in the state of Nevada. As I think everybody knows, we have so many casinos and hospitality entities in Nevada. So we've got many modified programs like with the El Dorado company and MGM. But I'd like to kind of start with it, or just actually focus on how I got into this. And it was the Starbucks in a beautiful area of northern Nevada. They opened up a roasting plant, and also it's a roasting plant and a distribution center. They had been there about 10 years, and VR, we were able to onboard many clients in those 10 years, but they were all, onesie twosies and requiring job coaches that had been there for years. And I started talking to the general manager over there, and it was evident to me that he wanted to do something on a grander scale. So I kind of pitched this idea of how about a big program. We would go 6 weeks, and we would have soft skills in it and hard skills. So these soft skills, the clients wouldn't be paid, but on the hard skills, they'd be on your floor. Your team would be, his team, the Starbucks team would be training the individuals. And then we did that for 4 weeks, and then there'd be a 2-week, what we called an internship, since there was a roasting plant and a distribution center. So the client naturally kind of liked one or the other, and they had, either kind of being in that roasting plant or being in the distribution center, they had a tendency to want to be in that area. So we did a 2-week internship that would be an all-inclusive hands-on training part in that. So it had been, Kathy showed her Hyatt card. I have an inaugural mug of the Starbucks Dieter, which is us, the State of Nevada Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation Inclusion Academy, and it's dated October 30th, 2014. And they did a mug, and I kept this thing, and I actually use it. So
Ken, how come I don't have one?
Well, I could send you my only one, and I could do that.
Oh, see, here's mine.
You drink a lot more Starbucks than I do.
So Ken, one of the things I don't want you to miss is that you picked up this great program and you shared it with the roasting plant in York, Pennsylvania. So again, another example of how you can take a training program where you're training hands-on and shifting people into work, but we're taking that same model so that the company doesn't reinvent the wheel in every location. So I want to thank you for that and recognize that.
Thank you. And that is the model of Starbucks of, launching a program, and it was so popular in Nevada. They have, I think, 6 of these programs going on in their DCs, their distribution centers, and they're just fabulous programs. And they have beefed up their vocational rehab. They have their own job coaches in place. They have their own team. They are in the mix. And the best part about this, we were paying on the job money to Starbucks. Now, when we onboard somebody, VR doesn't pay them. All we do is refer them. So we've got this thing down to a wonderful program. And I thank you for the time. I know I ran a little long, but it's been fabulous conference.
Great. Thank you so much, Ken, and thanks for your support. All right, Michelle out of Iowa. Do you want to step on in? Hi.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. First, I wanted to start by talking a little bit about Kathy's role and the net, and really how the work she and her team does impacts us at the state level. So Kathy is such a great facilitator at building relationships with businesses and then introducing us net members to those businesses, so we can actually back at home implement some of the things that they're talking about. And one that I wanted to specifically talk about was Sodexo. Actually, Sodexo is part of the hospitality industry in that they do a lot of work in hotels, and they actually created a separate link for Voc Rehab job candidates to apply through. And so we get a link that has their openings, our candidates apply, and the Sodexo team has been amazing in working with those individuals and getting them into work and hiring them. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about one of our partnerships in the hospitality world, and it is at a hotel, La Quinta. We have a business specialist who's embedded there. And what that really means is she has an office there. She reports there 1 day a week. And when she goes to work there, she is helping with all of the accommodations, the modifications. She's providing any job coaching that might be needed. She has what we call a job club there. And so anybody who might be interested in hospitality or customer service or working in a kitchen would meet with her at the hotel. She would take them on a tour. She might bring them into a room and mess up the bed and have them make the bed to show how quickly they can do it or how well they could do it. And then she might teach them how to do it the right way. So she's really there to support our dual customers. She wants to make sure that the applicants that we're bringing in are the very best applicants for the business. And she is supporting Brian, who is the manager, every single day with our job candidates. Another crucial thing that she does is she actually brings high school students in and introduces them to the hospitality field, introduces them to what it's like to work in a hotel. She has fun little competitions. Again, in the room, she'll unmake the bed and maybe make it a little messy and see which group of kids can clean the room the fastest and make the bed right the fastest. And it really gets kids excited about the field. And that's really important. As you know, the more we can expose kids to work in the different career fields, the higher chances they're going to work. So I know I was really short, but I would talk to you all forever, and then I would get the bonk. Stop, Michelle.
Michelle has a lot of enthusiasm. So, I just want to say, if you're fortunate enough to be in Iowa or California or Nevada or Connecticut, these are a group of incredible people, and they're there to really serve individuals. And at the national level, we are supporting over 1 million people with disabilities. And all that, I could say to our business customers is talent comes in all packages. And it's really about looking at the environment and making the environment accessible, because there's a lot of talent out there. And we stand by you as the hospitality and tourism industry gears back up. We've got a lot of talent waiting. So was Alia able to join us by audio or video? Okay. Well, technical difficulties. Are
Yeah,
you there?
I saw she was on earlier. No, it's Michelle. I saw she was on earlier, and she had shared that she was having problems with her
Right.
computer, and I think she's trying to get back on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we miss Alia, because we're almost at the end of our time here, and I want to respect the other people that are on to present, we will make sure that you have got the individual contact information for everyone that has presented here today. And like I said, talent comes in all packages, and we've got a lot of talent and a lot of motivated people. And we appreciate our partnerships with business. I do want to respond to one question that came in through the chat, and that was about language and etiquette. We can provide no-cost training to our businesses. We do a lot about that. But the general guidelines are always the person first. It's a person with a disability, a person who's blind, a person who has a vision loss, a person who's deaf, a person who uses a wheelchair. But it's also important to ask people what their preference is. I'm married to a man who is deaf, and he's very proud to be deaf, and he spells that with a capital D. So again, individual choice is always key, but don't be afraid to ask. So we're here. If we can be of assistance, let us know. And Ronnie and Cindy, thank you for your partnership. We look forward to growing it. And thank you for all the technical assistance, Cindy and Ronnie. We've got some conversations to have.
So
Thank you.
We might have your colleague tuned in here on the phone if you want to open up your video, Kathy. And we'll see. We see that someone's calling in as a panelist, which might be her. So
Alia, are you there? Is that the 619 number?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Maybe not. It's, you know what,
That looks familiar, you know. We will make sure Alia's contact information is there. So we'll get her. Oh,
good
someone
afternoon.
just unmuted. Hello.
Hello. Good
Hi,
afternoon. This is Alia Kuraishi from the California Department of Rehabilitation.
Hi, Alia. This
Can you
is
hear me?
Kathy. So if you want to say a few words. Okay, we're catching you in the
Goodness.
transition.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Having technical difficulties over here on all levels. Anyway, I just, thank you all for coming on. I cut off right after I think Andrew was on there presenting, but we appreciate all the partnerships with Hyatt and Marriott, everybody moving forward, and Hands-On has been a great project here in California at the Hyatt in San Diego, actually. My name again is Alia Kuraishi, and I'm the Business Engagement Manager for Department of Rehabilitation here in California. We work very closely with other states, but also, of course, I'm the net point of contact here in California, working with the business community and hoping to expand things for folks with disabilities in all arenas.
Thank you, Alia, and thank you for your time today, everyone. We look forward to working with you, and we'll shift it back to Cindy. Thank you.
okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kathleen. We really appreciate all of the speakers that we had today. And it was exciting to learn about vocational rehabilitation and really how you're creating all kinds of job opportunities across the country for so many different people and partnering up with companies and organizations that work in the travel trade. So just, we're gonna shift gears. We're now kind of moving into the second part of our session today. And this part, we are going to be hearing from people that are doing different kinds of work that relates to increasing inclusion and accessibility in the travel and tourism industry today. So they're going to be sharing from different angles, different perspectives, how they're collaborating and working with people who have disabilities. Some of them are advocates themselves. And, there's that mantra in the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us. And so that, I think, is going to be an important theme that we'll hear as we go along in these examples. In terms of who I am and my own connection to this, so I mentioned at the outset, at the beginning of the program, that my background, I'm originally from Michigan, but I've lived in New York City for 2 decades. And I'm, like I said, on the board of Travel Unity, which is the host of this session and of the summit this week. But I also have run a small tour company in New York City for the last 10 years or so. And we are really dedicated day to day to ensuring that we're providing assistive listening devices, all the different kinds of services and accommodations. Even when you register for a ticket, we ask, what accommodations do you need if you're coming on a tour experience? And so it's about, and a lot of this has come from my own background working in disability services for many years, as well as in museum accessibility. And so now we offer tours like that, and day to day are trying to make these experiences as inclusive as possible. But we also consult with and support different cultural institutions and organizations to help them more effectively engage all visitors, which include people with disabilities. Oftentimes when we design something for a person who has a particular need, so for example, maybe you make a quiet space for someone who, when I was a child, I had epilepsy and would sometimes need to steal away to a spot if I started to feel something coming on. That's going to benefit many different people. And so hopefully that's going to be a recurrent theme that we're going to hear as we welcome our speakers. So we're first going to hear from Arturo Gaona. He is the Chief Partnerships Officer and founding team member at Wheel the World. After his, what we call a flash talk, so he's going to share his expertise and what he's learned and the insights that he has for us. After Arturo, we're going to hear from Aliza Greenberg. She is the project leader. She wears many hats, but she is the project leader of Supporting Transitions, which is an effort to create all kinds of opportunities for people on the autism spectrum and opportunities for museums to create more inclusive environments through the Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium here in New York City. And then we'll hear from Gian Horn, who's an advocate. She's a speaker, a blogger. She's a founder of an organization called Give Beauty Wings, and we're just really so grateful to have these folks with us today. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome Arturo Gaona to the program. He, just a little bit of background about him. Hey Arturo, good to see you.
Hi.
So he's going to share with us the work that they're doing, but he's really trying to create disruptive, accessible travel experiences and awareness campaigns all over the world, from Maui to Qatar, Riviera Maya, to mention a few. And as the Chief Partnerships Officer for this newer company that's in the industry, they're reaching all over the world. I know because they reached out to us at Turnstile to establish partnerships so that they can create more accessible and inclusive travel experiences. So thank you so much. Arturo is originally, and maybe he can just share this himself, but he's originally from Mexico and he's joining us from Belgium. So thank you for joining us in the evening. He's passionate about mountain biking, mountaineering, food, and travel. So without further ado, jump in and start your flash talk and share your work with us.
Thanks, Cindy. Thanks for the invitation. Hi, everybody. So I have the opportunity to lead the partnerships part at Wheel the World. Wheel the World is a travel startup with the purpose to make the world accessible. A few years ago, one of my best friends came up with this crazy idea of doing a world-class hike in Patagonia, in the south of Chile, with one of our friends who is in a wheelchair. He's quadriplegic. So when he came with this idea, it was difficult to understand what he had in mind back then. But anyway, we did this trip to Toros del Paine National Park in 2017. So for the first time ever, somebody in a wheelchair was in this part of the world doing some trekking. We got some support to do this trip, and there were a lot of discoveries during this trip. You know, we had the opportunity to launch a documentary about this trip, and the unexpected happened, which was that more than 100 people reached out after looking at this documentary online, telling us on how amazing this was for them, because, you know, it was like a new world for them, or that they were looking for help, or that they were looking for some sort of service provider that could do the same type of things for them. So, you know, that was our moment of discovery, that people with disabilities wants to travel all over the world. No, it doesn't matter that it was in the last corner of the world. It was not only challenging to do this trip because of the logistics and all of that, but it was also just difficult to find the information regarding the accessibility of accommodation, the accessibility of the local transportation, or who could help us to do this. And we also realized that in general, the travel industry overlooks at this segment because they think that it is not very attractive from a business perspective. But as you get into the problem, you really see that the opportunity is huge. As many of you may know, there are over 1 billion people with disabilities in the world, and this impacts 2 other billions between families and friends. So at the end of the day, almost a third of the world's population has a connection with disabilities. From a business perspective, just in the US and in Europe, these travelers are already going around the world, and it is a market estimated in $72 billion annually, even though the travel industry is not treating them as they should. So as when we saw the problem, we decided to take action and start Will the World, with the purpose of making the world accessible by empowering people with disabilities to explore the world without limits. Our solution, thank you for sharing our website there. Our solution is an online travel marketplace where people with disabilities and their families and friends can search and book different types of accessible, travel accessible products, like accommodation, tours, or activities. In order to do this, of course, we need a lot of help. You know, there are many services that are already out there around the world that have very good levels of accessibility. But sometimes information is hard to find for users. It may take weeks or sometimes even months to plan a trip. So we are inviting industry partners to join us in our marketplace. We are signing industry partners for free, such as any type of accommodation or tour providers or local guides, in order to build together the one-stop shop of accessible traveling in the world. And we want to integrate a lot of information to make this happen. Actually, a big part of the problem can be solved by providing the right type of information. Sometimes we partner up with hotels that have amazing levels of accessibility, and they are not communicating these specific aspects of the properties that they have. Why? You know, there may be a lot of different reasons for them not to be sharing this type of features of accessibility, and we are finding a systematic approach where hoteliers and some other tourism professionals can show the accessibility of the products that they already have in order for the right user to find this type of products. So we invite, if anybody is hearing me today from the industry, to visit our website to check out what we have been doing for the past 2.5 years. And I'm pretty sure that we could partner up and work together to make traveling for people with disabilities much more better than what we have available right now. So that's what I wanted to share from the Will of the World perspective.
Yeah, and I want to share my own kind of experience with your team, where you had a wheelchair user, someone who uses a wheelchair, who lives here in New York City, come out and have some of our tour experiences to ensure that, you know, that the tour is what we say it is. And I think that's one of the things, like, you need to find that information. And then also there's so much education that needs to be done across the industry about what it means to be accessible, because it's certainly important to be accessible to people who use wheelchairs, but it's also important to have all of these other kind of levels and ways of effectively engaging people through communication, and just helping people plan for their visit to reduce anxiety. So the fact that you're aggregating and pulling together a lot of this information from so many disparate places is really admirable.
Thanks, Cindy. Thank you so much. And yes, at the end of the day, this information is in many different places. We are working to integrate it, but we need help from you guys, from different industry partners, just to make it possible, so that somebody in a wheelchair can book a trip to Tokyo in just a few hours from their smartphones. It should be that easy. So let's see what the future brings.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And please stick around, because we're going to come back at the very end for some audience questions and conversation at the very end. But next, I would like to introduce Aliza Greenberg. She's the project leader, like I mentioned, for supporting transitions with the Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium. She wears many hats. She's the Arts Enrichment Coordinator at Learning Springs School. She's a teaching artist. It keeps going. She's a teaching artist with CoLab Theater Group, and she's also an arts education consultant focused on access and inclusion. She has a master's in education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Aliza, we are delighted to have you here and are excited for your flash talk. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Cindy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm coming to you from New York City, so there may be some motorcycles and sirens outside my window. I apologize in advance. Just to do a visual description of myself, I'm a white woman in my mid-30s with brown curly hair that comes down to my shoulders, and I wear red glasses, and I'm wearing a blue kind of tie-dyed shirt today. And behind me is a window with sheer curtains and light coming in and a white wall. So I, as Cindy mentioned, I'm the project leader for supporting transitions with the Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium. Our full name is Cultural Connections for individuals with autism and other developmental and intellectual disabilities. So we really are looking at individuals who identify as neurodivergent and kind of fall into a range of disabilities, cognitive disabilities. MAC works with individuals of all disabilities and looks at how we can make our cultural organizations more accessible. The goals for supporting transitions are to increase opportunities at cultural organizations for adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities through employment, internship, and volunteer opportunities. We really believe that if individuals are going to visit our cultural institutions as visitors and audience members, they really need to see themselves represented in the staff. And so we focus a lot on employment and internship and volunteer opportunities. We also focus on recreational programs and life skills development programs that are going to bring this population into our cultural institutions and help them see that these institutions are a place for them. On the right-hand side of this slide is a picture from a symposium that we held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So there's a museum educator, a docent, walking a group of individuals through the gallery at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and they're holding clipboards as they're participating in a program. So the reason we focus on this population and on this work is about 50,000 young adults with autism exit school each year. And that's just autism, that's not other developmental and intellectual disabilities. So this statistic just focuses on autism. And that leads to a loss of community, support services, and structured daily activities. This is from a study out of Drexel University. And so this is a population where after school, there very few opportunities exist to participate in the community in which they live. And we see cultural institutions as really a hub for community activity, and we want to extend that community experience to individuals with disabilities. 85% of college graduates with autism are unemployed or underemployed. So when we think about the incredible need for employment opportunities, this is a population that really needs increased opportunities for employment, and our cultural organizations employ thousands in New York City, millions of people each year. So it's a great opportunity there as well. We look a lot at inclusive hiring practices to really make sure that opportunities are being provided in the cultural sector. So our inclusive hiring practices are kind of a web of these ingredients. Customized employment, where we're working with job support agencies, employment support agencies, to really work with cultural organizations to tailor positions to the skills and interests of the individuals. So these are great ways to break down some of the ableism that exists in our institutions and create work experiences that really fit the working style and needs of individuals with disabilities. We create accessible internships, so we place interns in different cultural organizations, and we provide training to those organizations about how to make these internships as accessible as possible. We do staff training. So we train cultural organization staff both on inclusive hiring practices and also on how to welcome visitors with autism and other developmental disabilities, so that it is, to go to our fourth ingredient, an inclusive community. We want to really build an inclusive community at these cultural organizations, and a lot of that is training. So we do a lot of training programs. We look a lot at building the pipeline for a career in the arts. We see that it starts with interest. So our ultimate goal is that individuals with autism see themselves as visitors, as employees, and getting what they need and want from a cultural organization. So interest is the first step. So we work with cultural organizations to really make sure that they're accessible for individuals to come as visitors and fulfill their interests and grow their interest in the cultural organization. We then have education opportunities for individuals, so academic or practical, whether it's volunteering or we actually have a course that I'll talk about. So we provide educational opportunities to get to know what's out there in terms of careers in the arts. We provide our internship opportunities, and then we support individuals moving into employment. So our internship program, like I said, places interns at cultural organizations throughout New York City. It's really important in terms of representation. So when visitors with disabilities come, they see somebody that looks and thinks like them in the front-facing staff of the organization. On the left-hand side is a picture of our intern at the Mount Vernon Hotel, Museum and Garden. So he's standing in a historic room, making notes on a clipboard because he is adapting their tour to be accessible for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And then on the right-hand side is our intern at the Roundabout Theater Company, who was working on their relaxed performances, which were also an effort to make the shows that Roundabout does accessible to individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. So it was so critical that their intern was working on this project to really represent that community. And as Cindy said, nothing about us without us. So it's really important for the individuals who are visiting to see that this experience has been created by somebody with a disability. We also we partner with the City University of New York to run a course on cultural careers, and we bring in different cultural organizations as guest speakers, and we work with CUNY students to understand all the different options available for careers in the arts. So this is our class at Queens College. They're all eating donuts on our final day, gathered around a desk celebrating. So we've found this model to be really successful in New York City to increase the opportunities at our cultural organizations. And we've talked with other cities that have similar organizations to MAC to really increase cultural opportunities. And you know, it's a model that can really be extended throughout the country and the world. So this is my contact information, stprojectleadermac@gmail.com, and I hope you'll reach out to us, and I know we'll be around to answer questions at the end. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Aliza, for joining us today and sharing this example. Full disclosure, I was involved with MAC for many years and got the ball rolling on some of those early grants for this program. So it's something that it's this program that just continues to grow, and it's truly a collaboration between cultural organizations, academia, and many different service providers across the city, disability advocates themselves. Like it's been awesome to see it grow with your team right now. And I'm so grateful you came and shared this. And I know there's other folks across the country that are trying to model this. So thank you for coming and sharing it with us. So now we're going to invite our last but not least, and then we're all going to come back.
Cindy, it's not letting me turn my video. It says the host has turned my video off.
Oh no, well, I'm the host, so I can fix that for you.
Okay, I got it. We're on.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so
I'm not actually in San Francisco, if anyone's curious.
But it makes us happy. It's like we need.
This is the fastest way to travel right now, the safest way.
So yeah. I would like to introduce you, which I know I always turn bright red when people read my bio, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to read yours.
I'm wearing red, so I'm prepared.
Yeah, well, we planned this, right? Like, okay, so Jian Horn is a joyful half Asian woman with cerebral palsy who serves as founder of the nonprofit Give Beauty Wings. She is an advocate. She's a speaker, blogger, and exemplar for the AT&T NYU Connect Ability Challenge in the creation of assistive technology. Jeanne was named Women's E-News 21 Leaders for the 21st Century in 2017, and in Walker's Legacy Power 15 in 2018. Give Beauty Wings tailored self-esteem programs began at NYU's initiative for women with disabilities and serve as a bridge to promote greater self-love and discovery, purpose, and connection. Her aim is to serve and connect humanity as a whole. She's basically a rock star, like many people we've had here today. And I actually met Jeanne in an interesting way. I was listening to the oral histories from the New York Public Library. There was a disability visibility kind of project where they documented stories, and I listened to her story and I just had to reach out. And so thank you so much for joining us. And we're excited to hear what insights you have for us based on the work you've been doing about what the travel and tourism industry should be thinking about when it comes to accessibility.
Well, actually, I wasn't planning to start out this way. I should say I'm a half Asian girl wearing a red jumpsuit at the moment. I normally traverse the world with 2 shiny ski poles, which you'll see right here. I have cerebral palsy. I consider it the blessing of my life. And a lot of the reason is because I cut the lines at Disney World and the airport. And, and when that is your reality, and also being able to connect to people from all over the world, especially in New York City, where it's supposed to be unfriendly, but I actually find that being so visible starts a lot of conversations. And I think it's really ultimately my work is about human connection. And I ask myself, does this help humanity? If the answer is yes, and I'm available, I do it. And that's really the guiding principle. But in terms of universal design, I've been really committed to fashion as a means to employment. And I wanted to actually, if it's okay with you, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my employment history, because in my previous life, before I started this advocacy, as you guys were talking about employment and sort of the fear that's associated, it made me start to think about my own history. So I remember interviewing a lot of different places right after college, where every single interview, they would tell me, oh yeah, you can revamp our website, or you can write for us here. They even told me like where I would be sitting, and every person seemed like they were on the cusp of hiring me, and then I'd never hear from them again. It's kind of like the equivalent of a guy on the first date saying, I'll go to Tokyo with you, and then you never hear from him again. So, I had a lot of experiences like that. And it wasn't until my second job where I became a grant writer for a theater in New York, 45 members total, 15 with disabilities, and a really diverse group of everyone else, that I actually, first of all, that I knew that my disability was an asset to them and was something that I brought to the table that maybe other grant writers they were talking to didn't. But I remember in that interview, the woman was completely atonal, like very stoic. And I thought I was bombing this interview. And the next day she wrote me a 3-page letter about how much she wanted to work with me and couldn't wait. So it was completely the opposite experience of what those other interviews were like. And I think, I realized that, a lot of times because there's fear there might be fear to say no, which I kind of wish that the people who had interviewed me had been a little more honest about what their fears were, so that we could work through them. I know that wasn't what I'm here to talk about, but I wanted to, just because I thought the conversation around employment was so pivotal, I wanted to add a little bit about myself. And that's kind of why it's really exciting at this point in my career to work for myself, so I can choose which companies I'm aligning myself with, like AT&T. I'm working with Zappos right now, many other places. I actually am on the board of the AIA New York, which is the Architectural Institute of New York. But I find that, again, talking about many hats, I'm a bit of a hat juggler, because I believe that all of these areas, whether it is fashion or hospitality or technology, film, all these things are part of moving culture forward, not only for disability, but for women, for all of our intersectionality. I think it's ultimately about even moving past diversity and inclusion and going into deep integration. And the only way that I could make change was deeply integrating myself with the people who were doing great work. So I think one thing that we don't talk about enough when we talk about this industry or design is the sexy factor. How come nobody's talking about accessibility in sexy ways, the way we would talk about an iPhone? Or, you know what I mean? When I think about, like, for example, my friend who's an architect, when he talks about architecture, you can tell he's a little bit, he's a little bit turned on by it, in the sense that he loves what he does. And I think that we've missed that part of maybe the hospitality industry. It's not just about compliance or hitting numbers. It's ultimately about how are you treating the customer, or have you trained all of your staff? So I actually, one of the things, I believe Cindy knows this story because we were at an event at the New York Times together. But I had an experience, and I'm glad the Hyatt's here, not the Marriott, even though I would say this to the Marriott as well. I actually went to one of the biggest disability conferences. There were, at the time, 1,200 people there. And 1,200 people, at least 60% of which had disabilities. And I had been at that conference in the same space the year before. So I knew that it took me about half an hour to get from my hotel room, which was at the Ritz. Speaking of Orlando, I know Orlando came up a few times, but I had to stay at the Ritz, which was right next door to the conference, but the buildings were connected. They're the same, supposed to be the same company, right? And I just called up the front desk because I'm paying $1,500 for, I think it was for 4 nights. So I'm paying $1,500 for 4 nights. And I called them up and I said, hi, I'm here for this conference. And I know that last year it took me about half an hour to get from point A to point B, where I was. And I was wondering if I could request a wheelchair just to and from my hotel room, once in the morning and once at night. And the woman said, there's only one wheelchair and it's for emergencies. And I thought, and I remember thinking this aloud. This was not meant as a threat, but I literally said to her, is that legal? 2 minutes of silence where she said, hold on. And then she said, oh, of course we'll accommodate you. And I have to tell you, the security guards were some of my best friends by the time they left, and they were so wonderful to me. But I actually thought, okay, forget compliance, forget legalities. But if somebody's paying $1,500 for just a few days stay, don't they, I don't know. I would think that something like someplace like the Ritz and Hyatt and all these high-end places, it should be about going above and beyond, not just meeting standards. So I encourage everyone to think about the sexy factor and also how welcoming you are, because that's really what hospitality is. It's built into the word, right? How welcoming is a place, and especially if you're paying top dollar. So, I mean, I'm grateful it worked out, but I mean, I was quite shocked at how difficult it was for a basic request like that. And then I do remember the security guard, who was the head of security, said, hey, do you think you could write my boss an email? Because it turned out the boss, who had not met me, was quite pissed that his security were taking turns, let's say half hour a day to escort me. And I think he was really frustrated and didn't realize why they were doing what they were doing. These guys became my friends, so they looked forward to it, and I looked forward to seeing them. But again, I think ultimately it's about training everyone involved, so you don't have these moments of awkwardness where maybe one person is on board, but everybody else doesn't get it, or everybody else is on board, but the one at the top doesn't get it. So these are just a couple of things that come to mind, and I'd like to also see it go beyond the choir. Right here we have choir members, but I'd like to see accessibility and the sexy factor be applied to every form of design. And there's so much more I could say, but I know we're going to do Q&A. So I think let's leave it there. And I hope that this is helpful. Looking forward to your questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much. So I just want to welcome Arturo back on. We're going to bring everybody back together. So Arturo, if you can come on. Let's see, Aliza as well. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Hi again.
Hey, all right, we got one more. There we go. Hey. It's like Hollywood Squares. This is how we live these days. So I thank you, and it's so enlightening to hear these different perspectives, and I feel like we're sort of hearing similar messages across the whole program, whether we were discussing vocational rehabilitation and those programs that are at the national and state levels and are really having a ripple effect across industries and making change versus sort of how each one of you as individuals or organizations or businesses are making that difference. And I guess like we did have a question here from the audience from Megan, and this one is about, what is the precise ask that you would like to put forth to travel journalists and destination marketing organizations for connecting with Wheel the World, to connect accessible tours, activities, etc. How should that be done? The travel industry is this sort of massive industry with so many levels. How do we create that systemic impact? And how are you trying to do that? I mean, this is a challenging kind of endeavor for you.
Yeah, totally. Technology in general in the travel industry is not very developed to assist travelers with disabilities. There is a 60% chance that if you book an accessible, whatever that means, accessible room around the world, you're not gonna get it. And that's not because the hotels are not accessible. In many cases, they are extremely accessible. But the information that sustains all the data behind that is mistakenly gathered. So that there is a challenge in gathering the right type of information and data to support a huge of supply. With supply, I mean inventory of tours and activities and accommodation. So there is a tech challenge that we're trying to approach. At this precise moment, we should be launching our next platform around January. So we have a team of 4 people working on that full time right now. But on the other side, that's on the tech development side. On the other side, we need help from the industry partners. And what does that mean is basically connecting with decision makers at the hotel chains that are interested in approaching this segment of customers. But this will generate also a new revenue stream, besides the fact of being also a response segment of the population.
Oh, sorry, we lost you for a second. My apologies.
No worries. So if you go to gowheeltheworld.com/partners, there is a very small form where you can give us your information, and we will certainly contact you later to include your services at gowheeltheworld.com. That's for free. What we do is we give you access to an online accessibility form where you will provide us of certain specific information and super important pictures in order for us to build a landing page of your product so that people with disabilities plus their families and friends can find this product online without too much hassle. So what we want to do in a way is to make it very easy for the industry partners to approach the right customer to access this amazing accessibility that in many cases they already have. So it's just about connecting the suppliers with the people that are looking into having these services. So we will be more than happy to connect and collaborate with whoever is listening to us, or who can help us spread the word.
Thank you, Arturo. It's really important work that you're doing here, aggregating all these wheelchair accessible sites and travel and tour companies. I wanted to give Aliza actually the opportunity to share how the Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, from a grassrootsy standpoint, is also aggregating information just in the New York metropolitan area about accessible experiences that people can have when they visit New York City.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. So we have a calendar on our website, a cultural calendar that cultural organizations, museums, theaters, libraries, zoos, gardens can submit any programs that they're having that are accessible in any way, and we will list them on our calendar. And that way, thank you, Cindy, if you're visiting New York City, or if you're here, living here, you can go to this calendar and find a program that is going to be accessible to you. It's totally crowdsourced from the cultural organizations around the city. We're also working on a new project. I don't know, Cindy, if you actually know this, but we're working on a new project around mapping virtual access. So now that we are in kind of a virtual space for a long time, we're mapping what different cultural organizations are doing to offer accessible virtual programming. And often we found that virtual programming is, presents a lot more accessibility than in-person programming for many people. And so we want these cultural organizations to really keep that aspect of their programming when we can go back to in-person experiences. So we're mapping who's doing what and best practices around virtual accessibility as well.
Oh, it's so important and really interesting. I mean, in this time, I know of people who say that they're traveling more than they ever did because of the access to technology. So people who aren't able to leave their homes that easily, but are now able to go virtually on a tour to Italy, or like have an experience at a museum that a historic site that they might not be able to access, or so in some ways, in a weird way, we've sort of broken down some barriers, but there's also new barriers now in this virtual landscape. So I'm so glad you guys are working on that. So Jean, you shared, I think, a really important perspective, which is this idea of the sexiness of accessibility. And we were at a travel event that was hosted by NYC and Company. I was on the stage speaking, she was in the audience, and when she spoke, I'm like, why is she not up here speaking? Because that's right? Like the whole thing about, I think this, in some ways we obviously need to partner with people that have disabilities, with disability service organizations and communities. But at the end of the day, the idea that we don't have universally designed human experience is problematic, right? And like, what do you think about, and I'm sorry, this is a question.
No, go for it. I'm not afraid.
How do we, and Jean, you can kick it off, but then if others have ideas, like, how do we work towards that? How do we see like a travel and tourism industry that really is for everyone? How can we get there? Like, how can we create some kind of mental shift around this sort of medical legal model to like, let's be inclusive because there's a business case. So if you could share like, your insights, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's why I'm so committed to, like, I'm on the Real Abilities Film Selection Committee, because I feel that, representation does that. And sometimes it's even bigger than making a presentation, is just showing an example of someone, traveling the world, or just, I don't know. I think there's many ways to recast that, but I think that we're already doing it. I think the internet has helped a lot. And maybe through Zooming, we're going to understand more. you know, I think that this is something we need. I mentioned the choir earlier, and I think we need to get it beyond the choir for it to really, I mean, because if it's just choir members, we're singing to ourselves. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. It's wonderful to be small and mighty, but it's got to grow. So I think it's really just, I don't think most people realize that it's 1/4 of the population. And I think we were for so many years expected to stay home. You know, obviously now we have a reason to stay home. But I think that that's part of why I'm so passionate about transportation in New York. Most people don't realize, for example, that we don't have same day travel options except for this one program that they're now trying to cut. So I started a petition to stop that, because I think the more that we see people out and about living their lives and trying to do things as joyfully as they can, or you know what I mean? I think that in itself will do it. But I think it's about getting to the people that don't know versus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with Shan in that part, and that's actually what made Will the World become a travel startup. At the beginning of this, we were just a bunch of friends with a Facebook and an Instagram account, and we kept continuing doing these epic projects and filming everything with super high quality. That made what Shan was saying, which is we connected with people that were not into disabilities. We pushed awareness by generating unique content with the support back then of brands and some crowdfunding campaigns and things like this. But these help us build this brand here. Like tourism in many cases for disabilities looks like this medical or legal thing, as you were saying, and we actually want to change that. And that's why we invest a lot of heart and time in developing the content that we have. And this has actually, and this is not to show off, this is to show that together we can make accessible traveling look cool. We have appeared in more than 400 press appearances around the world without spending $1 into that. Why? Because the world is expecting for more inclusion. The world is expecting for this type of solutions to become a reality. On the other hand, we have been developing projects in super unexpected parts of the world, such as Qatar or Singapore. You know, we are a Latin American startup based in the Bay Area, impacting different parts of the world. Why? Because we're disrupting how the travel industry conceives people with disabilities discovering the world. And I don't know, unexpected things like winning, because of one of the documentaries that we did, an award in Cannes, for example. Like, there are ways to make it cool. Like, we just need
What's
to
the name
get
of the
creative,
film? Not to
work
interrupt,
together.
but what's the name of the film?
Adventure is for All. It's in YouTube. You can find it there. It's a
Awesome.
5-minute short documentary. Yeah. So, you know, I just wanted to support Shan in that part, that it is actually not, it's not rocket science. You just need to put a little creativity and nice filmmaking and good pictures and a story. That's super important. There are a lot of amazing stories in the community that we need to tell the world. And that's about it. If the industry works together towards that, it's going to change really fast. And it's not only because of the social aspect of it, because at the end of the day, we like it or not, many of us are going to become part of the community of people with disabilities because of aging, basically. But besides that, to make it sustainable also, in terms of the economic model, there is a very interesting business case behind this. But the industry needs to really understand it and see it. And that's what we're trying to do. Also, not only to make it look cool, but also to make it attractive for industry partners.
Aliza, from the perspective of the nonprofit world, like performing arts organizations and museums, can you talk about the sexy factor, like how you feel the work you're doing is speaking to that?
Yeah, I feel like in the nonprofit sector with cultural institutions, I don't think we ever even use the word sexy, but because we're thinking, not in a marketing, not in that way. But I think, we've tried to really lift up the organizations that are doing really good work in this area, make their work the standard. And I think, to get us closer to this like universal design world is to really recognize that, we're all like that, everybody, we're talking about people. And so if we shift from thinking about kind of like visitors as a group or travelers as a group, and it's really about people, and each person has unique needs and individual needs. I mean, the term universal design is almost like a fallacy, because there's no one thing that's gonna make something accessible for everybody. But if we approach people like people, and Jean, your story about the wheelchair, it's like if we just talk to people as a person and say like, oh, this is really helpful to help a person, as opposed to like a policy,
Yeah.
I think we'll get there. And that's really, I think, the work that we're doing with the nonprofits, is to really like use their position as a nonprofit and as an organization that can really lead the way in taking an individualized approach and make them the kind of standard for doing that type of thing.
And I think there's also an aspect of this too, where the more we're not necessarily speaking to the choir, but having the systemic impact through the work that you guys are doing, or the vocational rehabilitation programs where there's employment placements, people of all different kinds of disabilities and work experiences. Once you have a friend that has a certain disability and you become acquainted with what makes their experience better for them, then you really care about that thing. And I find, like, I myself as an ally, like, I have friends who are hard of hearing, and throughout this pandemic, I have been one of those voices trying to say, hey, is there going to be captioning? Even though I don't need it, it's tiring for them to have to ask all the time. So this idea of being allies, learning what our brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors really need, and like, so that it's too tiring for them to always have to do that work.
Yeah. But to Aliza's point, I just want to say that the way that I've seen universal design is not so much that there's one design that fits everybody. It's not a one size fits all, so much as being able to make the case that if you have curb cuts, it's good for people with strollers. And if you have elevators, it's great if somebody has a lot of bags for Macy's or whatever, that they're going to be able, like that poor lady. I don't know if you guys remember this, any New Yorkers, that there was a lady with a stroller and a bunch of bags that fell down the subway steps because she couldn't, I don't know if the elevator wasn't working, and she died. And I feel like a lot of people ignore this until it happens to, I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to speak for humanity in general on this, but I think universal design means that when you design for people with disabilities, it benefits everyone, like captioning, for example. There are going to be times where you might have to have the volume down, but you still want to know what the conversation is. I put captions on all my Netflix or whatever I'm watching because sometimes I don't catch it, And so it might have been designed for one group, but it can benefit, many, many more.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Totally. And
yeah.
and another aspect that I wanted to mention, like what, for example, Aliza is leading in terms of also doing these internships and including people with disabilities as part of the staff in museums. That at the end impacts the whole equation. You can approach it from a perspective of customers coming to a museum, or from the perspective of employees being able to work at a museum. or a hotel or an amusement park or anything. At the end of the day, all these little efforts will add to basically making the world a more accessible place for everyone.
I think that's kind of a beautiful way for us to wrap up. I don't know if Aliza or Gian would like to share anything before we close out. If there's any insight, any dream for the future that any wise insights to share with folks who are watching.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are doing the work and being at the front lines of the movement. Because, I mean, obviously, I was saying we can't only be the choir, but we do need the choir to sing loudly. And I want to thank you guys for doing that. I also want to say, I think my last point about this universal design is going back to the sexy thing, is teaching those that are creating, whether it's the lived spaces we're in, that there's no reason you have to sacrifice beauty for function. You can have both. And I think that that's something that we need to talk to architects about, you know, technologists about, that your product is only as sexy as how well it works, right? And how many people it serves. So I think that's one myth that I would love to bust, that it's like either you have to wear grandma shoes or, you know, you've got stilettos. Like, why do we have to make it? I don't think it can be a Venn diagram of awesomeness. So I look forward to, I mean, that's what I really see in this decade ahead, is us being able to marry our ideals and, you know, everything together, beauty, ideals, and function. And I think all of you are doing that in different ways. So I just want to celebrate everyone here today.
Yeah, you guys all said it. Thank you so much. I'm, you know, happy to be working with everybody to make things more accessible. So thank you.
I want to, yay.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you
Thanks
all
so much for the invitation.
Yeah, this was great. And you know what? Travel Unity is a young organization that's really trying to think about intersectionality, and obviously disability is a part of that. Like, people with disabilities are a big percentage, as we've talked about. And there's just human variation, you know, and so it's about treating people as people, whether they're employees or visitors. That's really what we're trying to do, is open up this conversation more in the travel and tourism industry. And I definitely think we did that today across both segments, both at the beginning about these models of how these large companies are like in a hotel chain, you know, the Hyatt, for example, is really kind of participating a lot in this vocational rehabilitation programming, which is amazing, and creating opportunities for so many people. But each one of you are also doing that too in your own ways. And so I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us for the Travel Unity Summit. A few things I wanted to highlight. So one is that we are having a kickoff networking session. If you want to jump on tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m., you can use the word kickoff as your code. You can see in the link there. And then there's also a direct link to register that I posted in the chat. And we also have a session tomorrow that's called LGBTQ Lives, Talks and Tales, and that's in partnership with Equality Florida. So if anybody wants to check that out, we'd love to have you. And then there's going to be sessions all across the next week about how we're going to reset and rebuild this industry that has really struggled and is still struggling right now in the midst of this pandemic. So I wish each and every one of you health and safety in this pandemic. I want to thank Kathy West Evans. Oh, Ronnie said, oops, sorry, my bad. Ronnie is the executive director at Travel Unity. It's 6 to 8 p.m. is the networking tomorrow night. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for the clarification. Eastern Standard Time, or District Time, daily time. All right, it's time to wrap up. Thank you. Hey.
We got you. We got you.
And thank you, Kathy, and all the folks from the VR world. Not virtual reality, but vocational rehabilitation, and everybody for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.